There was a guy named Frank Buckles who turned 100 years old, and people wanted to know what his secret was to his longevity. And he said, if you feel like you're going to die, don't. That's good advice. I'm filming this on Easter morning, and we know that Holy Week is not about reenaction, looking back at the washing of the feet and the cross and the suffering and the death and the resurrection as something that happened 2,000 years ago. It's about right now. We are only saved in the present moment, and the risen life is hidden in this one. The poet writes, to remember the other world in this world is to live in your true inheritance. So if you feel like you're losing your mind and your hope, don't. Because the risen life is hidden in this one. Which reminded me of one of the most magnificent human beings I've ever known, a woman named Soledad. She had 4 kids. 2 of her sons were gunned down in the streets by gang violence, just months apart from each other. When I heard about the second son, I was saying Mass at a camp, and I went straight to her house, and I found her in there. Forget Kleenex or handkerchief. She was sobbing into a bath towel. And I found my arms were too short to wrap around this kind of grief. So I ran into her a couple months later on First Street, and I hugged her and I said, hey, how you doing? And she said, I love the 2 kids who remain. I hurt for the 2 who are gone. And then she starts to cry, and there's kind of a sense of embarrassment. And she says through her tears, the hurt wins. The hurt wins. A couple months later, she gives me a call, and she told me that earlier in the week she had been in the hospital. She went to White Memorial Emergency Room. She was having chest pains. Turned out to be nothing. But they had her on a gurney, and they were tending to her when all of a sudden the paramedics bring in this kid on a gurney. He's like 15 years old, a gang member, covered in blood, gunshot wounds, and they're ripping off his clothes and they're pounding on his chest and they're yelling, we're losing him. We're losing him. And Soledad looks at him and recognizes him as a kid who was a member of the gang who most certainly took her 2 sons from her. And she thought, what would people say at this moment? Would they say, pray that he dies? But she said no. She prayed as hard as she could. She said, please God, let him live. I don't want another mother to go through what I've gone through. And he lived. And it only seems like the hurt wins. To remember the other world in this world is to live in your true inheritance. We have maybe 40 days left of this. Live in your true inheritance. So if you feel like you're losing heart and losing your patience, don't. Because the risen life is hidden in this one. And love always wins and always will. Love you so much.